Next on Link TV. Latin Pulse, news and analysis from Latin America as seen by Latin American media, followed by a panel discussion on the issues. Next on Latin Pulse, only on Link TV.
The following program is an original production of Link TV.
Free trade in Latin America, an ingredient for economic growth or a recipe for social unrest.
Que nos querían empaquetar como si fuéramos Honduras o Nicaragua, con todo respeto a los países.
And the impact global warming will have on our food, our health, our safety, and our future.
Estamos corriendo el riesgo de perder hasta un 25% del Producto Interno Bruto Mundial.
This and more coming up on Latin Pulse. Hello and welcome to Pulso Latino. I'm your host, Marcos Gutierrez.
Entendamos que México tiene el 90% de su comercio con Estados Unidos y solo el 3.2% con toda América Latina, o sea, nada.
Our first topic tonight, free trade in the Americas, how it's being perceived by consumers and the business community. And how it's being rejected by those that see it as a free ride for the industrial world. In this day and age of globalization, trade agreements have become pretty much a ticket for growth and development. One of the most desirable markets in the world is Japan. That island nation is opening the door to its rich consumer markets in exchange for access to badly needed raw materials for its industries. Chile has become the first Latin American country to strike a free trade deal with Japan. Chilean television reports that this agreement not only will expand its markets tenfold, but will also bring its products to a different level.
Dos pesados libros contienen el Tratado de Libre Comercio entre Chile y Japón. El canciller Alejandro Foxley y su par nipón Taro Aso firmaron estos volúmenes hoy en Tokio, en una importante ceremonia que sella una alianza con una de las principales economías del mundo.
Nosotros terminamos las negociaciones durante 13 meses. Durante ese proceso de negociaciones renové mi convicción de que Chile es un socio digno de nuestra confianza.
Hemos firmado un tratado que nos da un acceso a 130 millones de consumidores que se suman a los de China, a los de Singapur, a los de Corea, 2.500 millones de personas.
Japón, con 127 millones de habitantes y un ingreso per cápita de casi 4 veces el nuestro, ofrece sin duda demanda de calidad para casi todas las exportaciones chilenas.
Ya los productos minerales están entrando con o sin este acuerdo, pero ahora vienen los productos agrícolas y eso es una gran cosa.
Another country in search of new markets is Bolivia. Bolivian television reports that President Evo Morales is personally managing negotiations for a free trade agreement with Japan.
De esta manera, el presidente Evo Morales emprendió viaje a Japón, junto con una comisión conformada por el ministro de la Presidencia y el vocero Alex Contreras. El objetivo de este viaje será buscar nuevos mercados para exportaciones bolivianas. Asimismo, el primer mandatario lleva un paquete de propuestas para colaboraciones en diferentes áreas de nuestro país.
Mexico, on the other hand, has a free trade agreement with the United States and Canada. Recently, Chilean President Michelle Bachelet visited Mexico to sign an economic cooperation agreement. Venezuela's Telesur reports that to some Mexican legislators, Mexican trade with Latin America is pretty insignificant.
La presidenta de Chile, Michelle Bachelet, llegó a México para una visita de prácticamente 2 días. Por la mañana, junto con el presidente Felipe Calderón, firmó el Acuerdo Estratégico de Asociación Económica. Pero aquí, en la Cámara de Diputados, donde fue recibida en pleno por el Congreso, se destacó la importancia más política que en materia económica que tiene esta visita.
Se inventaron ahí una fórmula de acuerdo de asociación estratégica, pero entendamos que México tiene el 90% de su comercio con Estados Unidos y solo el 3.2% con toda América Latina, o sea, nada.
But that doesn't mean that Mexico is not looking to increase trade with its neighbors to the south. Mexican television reports on a new trade bloc being formed to help the southern Mexican states increase trade with Central America and Colombia.
Y los objetivos fundamentales de este plan es lograr una mayor integración regional en este conjunto de países para potenciar efectos de desarrollo económico y social.
¿Qué representa para México? ¿Algún significado adicional?
Para México tiene efectos positivos adicionales. Todos sabemos que el país sufre una dualidad. Tenemos una zona norte fuertemente integrada con Estados Unidos, con unos mayores niveles de desarrollo y de riqueza, y tenemos los estados del sur que tienen menores niveles de desarrollo y donde se encuentran los mayores niveles de pobreza, los índices de marginación. En la medida en que este tipo de proyectos de integración generen de alguna manera una columna de polos de desarrollo, esto va a tener beneficios favorables para los estados del sureste y eventualmente esto puede lograr incrementar sus niveles de crecimiento y de desarrollo.
Colombia, on the other hand, is looking to expand its markets beyond Latin America. Colombian television reports that Germany could very well be its next trading partner.
El presidente Uribe le solicitó a su homólogo alemán Horst Köhler que se convierta en su embajador ante Europa para que acelere la negociación de un acuerdo entre la Comunidad Andina de Naciones y la Unión Europea.
Colombia tiene toda la voluntad de acelerar esa negociación. Sería muy grave que se aplazara.
Uribe se propone auspiciar la firma de un acuerdo con Alemania para el desmonte de la doble tributación, clave para aumentar la inversión de ese país en Colombia. Köhler fue sincero en sus apreciaciones sobre la situación colombiana.
Colombia va por un difícil camino, pero por el rumbo correcto, y soy optimista en cuanto al futuro de este país.
But not everybody in Latin America is standing behind free trade agreements. Some view them as ploys from developed nations to steal natural resources from Latin America. Costa Rican television reports thousands took to the streets of San Jose to show the government their opposition to the trade agreement being negotiated with the United States.
En el movimiento se hicieron presentes líderes políticos, así como algunos diputados quienes participaron de la manifestación.
Que nos querían empaquetar como si fuéramos Honduras o Nicaragua, con todo el respeto a sus países. Hemos tratado de que cambie este TLC, que se renegocie, no se ha querido hacer y entonces ahora hay que hacer todo lo posible para que en el ámbito de la democracia y el respeto entre todos los costarricenses no sea ratificado por la Asamblea Legislativa.
Yo lo que quiero decirle al presidente de la República es que recapacite, porque el pueblo le está dando la espalda en este acto.
Es una manifestación pacífica, es una manifestación alegre, pero que no se confunda el presidente Arias. Es una manifestación llena de fervor, de firmeza, y este es el comienzo. Vamos a seguir marchando como diputado y como ciudadano en las calles de mi patria hasta derrotar este tratado de libre comercio.
And to discuss these issues, we have in our studio Patricia Mercado, a Knight International Fellow at Stanford University, and Jennifer Krill, who is a Program Director at the Rainforest Action Network. We're also joined from Washington, D.C. by journalist Roselena Ramirez, correspondent for Venezuela Network Telesur, and by Jaime Granados, who's a trade specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank. I'd like to first of all ask Mr. Granados, let's start with you. Is free trade a good policy or bad policy?
Well, that is a very general question, a very large question. In general, there is a recognition that it's positive. Although it is very clear now that it's not enough to promote development in developing countries. Very often you have to associate free trade policies with other internal policies, public policies geared towards macroeconomic stability, intelligent microeconomic interventions, and systemic competitiveness, for instance, and social equity. If you do not couple free trade with these other policies, you may run the risk of having policies which are not going to work towards the interests of the majorities in the developing countries.
Why is it important for the United States to really have fairness in the trades? Let me put it out that way, see what you can comment on it.
I think the United States have a very difficult role with all the Latin American countries, because at first you cannot sign a free trade agreement with economies that are so different than the United States. We are developing countries, and the United States is a first world country. And when you try to have a free trade, Obviously, it's good for all the economies, but you have to have equal opportunities in both countries. And I put an example between Mexico and the United States. I cannot say is not good for Mexico, but could be better if Mexico has the same conditions, the economic conditions and the opportunity conditions that the citizens in the U.S. have.
Let's talk to Roselena Ramirez, a journalist from Telesur, correspondent in Washington, D.C. I would say that it is an accepted fact that some of these trades are not as fair as they could be. What about with South America, between the South and the North, let's say?
No puede ser justo un acuerdo en donde una economía fuerte que además subsidia a la agricultura, por ejemplo, vaya a competir con economías débiles que están en pleno desarrollo y que además su fuerte precisamente en algunos casos es la agricultura, y es muy difícil para esos países subsidiar a un buen grupo de agricultores. Entonces creo que existe la necesidad, probablemente los acuerdos sean positivos. Hay quienes critican estos acuerdos porque dicen que son hechos por y para grandes empresas, para que se beneficien grandes empresas, y lo que sucede entonces es que los campesinos, los pequeños productores terminan yéndose a la bancarrota.
Some of the problems with these trade agreements are sometimes the world laws, shall we call them in that fashion, affect the local environment. Jennifer Krill, could you give us a little bit of that background? Program Director at Rainforest Action Network.
It certainly is a major problem. You know, the funny thing about the trade agreements, like for example the WTO, when a country signs on to the WTO, they actually sign on for the WTO to be able to supersede that country's own laws. What that means is that democracy doesn't work anymore. The people don't have a right. They don't vote for the WTO. They don't vote for the trade agreement. The people vote for their local governments and for their national governments. But the national governments give up those rights, and in doing so, they give up their own laws. They give up their own rights to regulate social justice, their own rights to regulate the environment, to protect their forests, to protect their oceans, to protect the water and the food of the people in the country.
Mr. Granados, you may or may not have a different take on this. Could you comment on what she just said, please?
That is a very extreme view of the situation, because it is not true that actually countries resign to the ability to impose internal laws protecting the environment or protecting many other aspects of the internal economy and internal policy. So it is true that in some cases there may be some restrictions on the ability to impose trade barriers based on some environmental grounds, but overall the protection of the environment in WTO is a legitimate objective, which may eventually trump trade restrictions. So we have to be very careful, and in any way the trading community is still working out more specific terms of interaction between trade issues and environmental issues, because there is a general recognition that the environmental issues are very serious and need to be taken into account. But it is very difficult to make overgeneralizations. You have to speak on a more detailed basis, and you have to look at more specific issues in order to be able to say something that is really worth discussing.
Jennifer Krill, I believe, has a follow-up comment, and then perhaps even Patricia Mercado.
Well, I mean, certainly countries can make their own laws. What happens with the WTO and with the trade agreements is that if another member of that trade agreement doesn't like that law, if that law is viewed as a trade barrier, then that country can be taken to a tribunal within the trade agreement and the law can be undone. What I mean, what happens, the result of that is that the environment often is viewed as a trade barrier. And yes, I agree that the trade agreements are acknowledging the need for greater social and environmental criteria, but so far they don't have it yet. And this is part of the reason why the WTO is having such a hard time finalizing the latest round of talks, because the social issues and the environmental issues are so pressing and they have not been resolved yet.
Patricia Mercado, you have the final word on this.
I think the free trade is not affecting the development of the countries. I think the main problem in the countries are the kind of government we have. And if we have corrupt governments, and if we have very poor, efficient governments, and if the citizens doesn't have the right to say something about this kind of governments, then you will not have development in these countries. I think the main reason of the problems in Latin America is not the free trade. I think the main reason in Latin America is the kind of governments we have there.
One of the topics that could have a major impact on our lives is obviously global warming. Is it really happening, or is it just hype? We will take a closer look at that subject and continue our panel discussions about Latin American issues in a moment. We have just seen how aggressively some Latin American nations are pursuing free trade agreements to improve their economies. But with an increase in trade comes an increase in transportation, industrialization, and pollution, all of which have been linked to global warming. The following report from Mexico's Once Noticias says the future doesn't look too bright when it comes to global warming.
Un informe sobre el acelerado calentamiento del planeta prevé un futuro sombrío para las próximas décadas, cuando los seres humanos, animales y plantas padecerán la escasez de agua, inundaciones en zonas altas y costeras y una caída del 30% en las cosechas de alimentos. El panel intergubernamental sobre cambio climático, elaborado por 2.500 científicos de 100 países, sacó por primera vez estas conclusiones del deterioro paulatino y constante del ecosistema y no de modelos hipotéticos. Destacaron que serán los pobres los más afectados.
People who are poor are least equipped to be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change.
Los académicos recordaron que los gases emanados de la actividad humana perforan la capa de ozono que rodea la Tierra, por lo que en este siglo XXI la temperatura a nivel global aumentará por lo menos 1.5 grados centígrados.
But the effects of global warming, like floods, glaciers melting, and unusually high temperatures, are not things of the future. In some parts of Latin America, these are real issues that are currently underway.
Este será el año más caliente desde el siglo XVII. Según científicos, es inevitable el aumento de la temperatura. Centroamérica y el Caribe será una de las zonas más afectadas con el calentamiento global.
El planeta ya se calentó 0.6 grados centígrados, va probablemente a seguir calentándose hasta los 2 grados centígrados más inevitablemente. Para parar ese calentamiento en 2 grados centígrados se necesita, según el informe Stern, invertir aproximadamente un 1% del Producto Interno Bruto mundial. Si esto no se hace, estamos corriendo el riesgo de perder hasta un 25% del Producto Interno Bruto mundial de aquí a unos 25 años.
Estas cifras corresponden a pérdidas por producción y no incluyen el gasto debido a la atención de los desastres naturales. Según expertos, se debe actuar inmediatamente.
But global warming is not only about ecology. The effects are expected to have a huge impact on the world's social order, creating a massive migration of refugees from the third world. Mexican television reports the U.S. government sees this as a matter of national security.
Un panel de 11 generales retirados del ejército estadounidense presentó un reporte de 63 páginas en el que pide al gobierno de su país asumir el cambio climático como un asunto de seguridad nacional. En el reporte titulado Cambio climático y su relación con la seguridad nacional, aseguran que el calentamiento global podría generar migraciones masivas de personas desde países en desarrollo, principalmente en África, Asia y Latinoamérica, hacia los países desarrollados. Los exmilitares revelaron que el ejército de Estados Unidos lleva algunos años investigando los posibles impactos del cambio climático para la política y la seguridad de ese país.
What's really unusual and some say unfair is the fact that most of the global warming effects are being felt in the southern hemisphere, while most of the causes of global warming are traced to the northern hemisphere. Ms. Krill, please tell us, what is your take on this?
It's fundamentally an equity issue. The global north produces most of the pollution. In the United States, for example, is responsible for 25% of the global warming pollution in the world. And yet the United States is not signed on to Kyoto. We have not taken any governmental or intentional steps towards reducing our greenhouse gases. There have been some interesting voluntary steps that go nowhere nearly far enough. And the sad fact of global warming is that it's an equity issue, just like free trade can be an equity issue, where the rich get all the benefits. We get to drive our big SUVs, and we get to use our electricity whenever we want, and the poor suffer all the consequences.
We go to Roselena Ramirez, a journalist from Telesur, correspondent in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to ask her about how global warming is concretely affecting or will affect the Latin American countries, please.
Es cada vez más común que países como por ejemplo Venezuela, en donde nunca un huracán o una tormenta que se convierte en huracán se había comenzado a desarrollar en las costas venezolanas, y ahora se han visto, el año pasado se vieron varias manifestaciones de este tipo. También se ha visto mucho en las inundaciones en Bolivia, por ejemplo. Hace pocos meses hubo una gran inundación en donde hubo bastantes personas afectadas, bastantes bolivianos afectados.
What is happening with the global warming? For example, in Mexico, it's not a very big issue, the global warming. I think because we have another big problem is to solve, and the citizens has to work every day to solve their needs, like find a job, to feed their families, to protect them against the violence, and they don't care about what is happening with the global warming. And I think the important thing is have a very big campaign to inform the people what is the real consequences.
Ms. Jennifer Krill, I'm sure that you would have something to say about that when she says that people are not really concerned about this. Do you find that to be true?
Well, it's certainly true in the United States. I think it's changing. And in fact, recent polls show that there's an increase in awareness and concern about global warming in Mexico and in the United States. But we need to, the problem with global warming is that we need to do much, much more than educate the average people. We need to actually stop emitting greenhouse gases by a dramatic amount. The science says we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050. If we don't take these actions, then the people will certainly know about global warming, because the consequences are droughts, the consequences are melting glaciers, reduced access to drinking water. The consequences are that we will no longer be able to continue living the lifestyle that we lead on a global level. But I think that the culprit isn't necessarily the people of Latin America. I think the culprit, much more so, is the United States.
What can financial institutions do about this global warming situation, sir?
Well, I guess there are several initiatives, and many of them are actually being developed right now by many financial institutions around the world. Perhaps one of the most important is to raise awareness on the importance of this issue and to produce analytical studies and more hard evidence as to what is the reality, what are the solid facts here. Although there's a mounting quantity of information on this, and there is a healthy now global consensus that this issue is actually taking place and needs to be addressed on an urgent basis.
It is now in vogue, isn't it, for large industry to start looking at being a little bit more green?
Start looking at, but taking action is not in vogue. In fact, only the Carbon Disclosure Project only has 72% of industries worldwide responding to a questionnaire about greenhouse gas emissions. Only 30% of them actually commit to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and almost none of them are reducing at the rate that we need to reduce if we're going to seriously tackle global warming.
When we return, a very special park where art takes center stage. Strolling through a manicured park on a nice spring afternoon is what most people would like to do after a hard day's work. in Havana, Cuba, you can do that and admire works of art at the same time, as we see in this report from Venezuela's Telesur.
Eduardo intenta ahora dar nueva vida en cemento a sus ideas. Antes lo hizo en su primera escultura ambiental, una máquina de moler gigante.
La pieza la denomino reflexión. Es hacer un llamado a la humanidad de que no muela el medio ambiente, que no destruya el ecosistema. No hay nada más parecido que el hombre, que una máquina de moler carne, que lo que está acabando con los bosques, con todo.
Como Eduardo, otros 16 artistas, escultores, arquitectos y diseñadores se animaron con la idea de concebir y realizar piezas de gran tamaño para ocupar un lugar en la exposición permanente del Parque de las Esculturas de Cienfuegos en el centro sur de Cuba.
Ya aquí tenía la imagen que tenía esta zona aquí, que estaba desolada, que había hierba, no había nada construido.
Se trata de 15 obras con una amplia gama de materiales, técnicas y estilos que se funden en el concepto del arte para espacio público, no para adorar o reverenciar, sino para utilizarlo. Esta obra, Siempre Izquierda, es un banco que a la vez deviene pupitre, donde el transeúnte puede detenerse unos instantes para aprender del arte. De este modo, 3 generaciones de artistas, unos desde el realismo conceptualista y sugerente y otros desde la fantasía poética, intentan llamar al esparcimiento y la recreación a quien transita la ciudad. Así, Cienfuegos mantiene su aire de ciudad de avanzada, propio de la única urbe moderna de Iberoamérica, enteramente soñada, diseñada y construida en el siglo XIX, que ha recibido en Iberoamérica la condición de patrimonio cultural de la humanidad.
And that's all the time we have today. I thank you for watching this week's broadcast of Latin Pulse. I would like to thank our panel for being with us, starting with Roselena Ramirez, a journalist from Telesur, correspondent in Washington, D.C. Bureau, Jaime Granados, trade specialist at Integration and Regional Programs Department at Inter-American Development Bank, Patricia Mercado, here in the studio, journalist, Knight International Fellow at Stanford University, and Jennifer Krill, Program Director at Rainforest Action Network. And we look forward to continuing this dialogue on our next show. Thank you for joining us. We would also like to thank American University in Washington, D.C. and the students at the Latin American Media Studies Department who are helping with the research for this program. Join us next time when we take a closer look at Latin America through the eyes of Latin American media. For more information about Pulso Latino and Latin America, log on to linktv.org. I'm Marcos Gutierrez. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on Latin Pulse.
Latin Pulse was made possible thanks to the generous contribution from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Pulso Latino ha sido posible gracias a la generosa contribución de la Fundación John D. y Catherine T. MacArthur.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs that connect you to the world.